नमो ब्रह्मादिभ्यो ब्रह्मविद्या संप्रदायकर्तृभ्यो वंश ऋषिभ्यो महद्भ्यो नमो गुरुभ्यः सर्वोपप्लवरहितः प्रज्ञानघनः प्रत्यगर्थो ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। ॐ ईशावास्यमिदं सर्वं यत्किञ्च जगत्यां जगत् तेन त्यक्तेन भुञ्जीथा मा गृधः कस्य स्विद्धनम्। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः।
These teachings by Dhyanatha, Dhyan, the son of Atharva, it just occurred to me that I completely forgot to tell the meaning of the word Dhyan when we discussed him. And it's a very interesting word because Dadhi means curd, dahi in Hindi, and Dadhyang, anchu, to become. So Dadhyang means someone who has become curd, the curdled one. What does that mean? Whose mind has become still, solidified, condensed, who has solidified, condensed that little bit of curd which has to be placed for the milk to become curd. That is the teaching, and when that teaching permeates the whole mind slowly and slowly and slowly, then the mind becomes solid, the mind becomes condensed, the mind becomes still. Then if you put it into Channi, what is channi? Yeah, the water goes through it and the solid mass remains. It can, if you would put milk into that sieve, into the sieve, whole milk will pass through. That is what happens. All our consciousness passes through the senses, but into the external world, and it never becomes aware of itself. It never remains within. But someone who has curdled, who has solidified, who has condensed his awareness, it does not easily flow through the holes of that sieve and remains within. So that is again a symbolical meaning, a metaphorical rupaka, a deep metaphor related deeply to the internal experience of stillness, towards which the word dadhyang points. So dadhyang or dadhichi, it means the same thing. Now these verses which we just recited, they are known as mantra. This is a mantra. Mantra is a very specific word which is only used for the verses that have been revealed and hence are within the Vedas. Any verse belonging to the Veda is called a mantra. Therefore, for example, the verse of the Bhagavad Gita is not a mantra, that is called a shloka. The technical word in Sanskrit for the verse of the Bhagavad Gita or Mahabharata or Puranas, the texts on mythology and all these texts, they're the verses. Mostly all of them are written in verses, in specific meters, but these verses in Sanskrit are known as shloka. Shloka simply means a verse that glorifies the greatness, glorifies the beauty, the infinity of this universe, the vastness of this universe and its fundamental source, its fundamental essence. But the word mantra is a very important word, and there is a lot of discussion on what this word really means. It is deeply, first of all, it is derived from the root man, to think, which is the root of the word manas, mind, this continuous stream of awareness. And tra means to protect. So mantra is something that is used to protect the mind from going out and getting lost with external objects. Something that enables it to hold back. Manana trayate, that which protects from agitation, that which protects when a person meditates on it, when a person thinks about it. That is called a mantra. This is a very literal significance of the grammatical significance of the word mantra. So what is it? On a very gross level, a mantra is this construction of words. Ishavasya, idam sarvam, yatkincha, yatkincha. This accumulation of words which a person pronounces, that is understood as a mantra because it gives something to the mind to focus upon. And the interesting thing about a mantra is, at least when it comes to the Vedic mantras, and strictly speaking, only a verse from the Veda can be called a mantra. Each one of these verses is like a mirror. which reflects our awareness back upon itself. By allowing a mantra to become the mind content, like a mirror, if you look at it, you don't see something else, you just see yourself. The eye sees itself. It reflects the gaze back upon itself. And that is exactly what a mantra does. It reflects the gaze, the internal gaze of the meditator back upon itself. That is the work of the mantra. That is the work of the words that have been put together by the masters so that someone can use them as a sound prop for meditation on the meaning and on the sound itself, which then directs awareness back upon itself. Rather than becoming aware of something else, it becomes a method, it becomes a means, it becomes a door of internal awareness, of awareness itself. So, but this is a very primary significance of the word mantra. Accumulation of words, a collection of words. Any collection of words as revealed to the Vedic masters is understood as a mantra. Some of these are meaningful and some of them are highly symbolical in nature and therefore have no grammatical verbal meaning, but as symbols stand for something, and hence in that sense symbolically, because they ultimately every word is just a symbol. When I say flower, the connection of the word flower with the actual flower out there is just mentally constructed. It is accepted by a huge group of people, and that's what makes it meaningful. But it is just a mental construction. In reality, there is no connection between the word flower, Flower, and the actual flower out there. So similarly, for the sake of meditation, some bija mantras which inherently they consist of monosyllables which inherently have no meaning of their own, and yet deeply symbolize of certain meditative experiences that a person has as he follows the meditative path and uses it as an object for meditation. So that is bija mantra. Mantras are meaningful, and bija mantras themselves have no meaning. They cannot be translated into something. But when a person uses these sounds as an object of meditation, they are deeply meaningful in their own accord. Om is such a bija mantra, which Om, it means yes, but it has no grammatical meaning of its own. Yet it is the highest symbol in the understanding of Vedanta when it is explained. So it becomes an object of meditation in itself. So it's called Mantra Raja, the king of all mantras. However, what we hear, this accumulation of words, is just the very primary significance of the word mantra. The second significance and the more meaningful significance of the word mantra is the state of mind which is created as a result of contemplating these mantras, contemplating their meaning by meditating upon them. What the masters did, they were in a particular state of mind. They communicated their own state of mind through these mantras, so that hundreds and thousands of years later, today, because these mantras were seen thousands and thousands of years ago, even by the latest dates, the Rig Veda the latest date ascribed to it is 3,500 years ago. So 3,500 years earlier, a great rishi who was in a particular state of mind, by communicating it through a mantra which is like a which is also called chandas, a vessel in which that experience is communicated. Today, a person can use it as a ladder, as a means to acquire the same state of mind in which the rishi was by contemplating it. So ultimately, that state of mind, that meditative state of mind which a person acquires as a result of meditating on that mantra, contemplating on its significance, and allowing the mind to experience the same experience that the master had. That experience in itself, that state of mind, that whole mental construction, that is the second and deeper meaning of the word mantra. In that sense, the mantra does not signify an accumulation of words, but a state of mind, a vritti. What Patanjali calls a vritti, a state of mind. And if you read Patanjali carefully, the Yoga Sutras there very carefully, for him, agama, the Vedic teachings are a state of mind. If you look his definition of the states of mind, the first one is pramana, the correct state of mind, which is acquired through sense perception, through inference. And the third way of acquiring a correct state of mind, meaningful for yoga, is agama. So the text, the teachings, is just a means. Ultimately, agama is not the book out there. Agama is not even the accumulation of these words that we hear from our masters, but the resulting state of mind, the vritti, which is what agama, which is what the Vedic, when we use the word Veda, agama is just Patanjali's word for Veda. Agama literally means something that has come down to us through a lineage. That is what agama means. The teachings that have come down to us. That is what agama means, and it refers to the Vedas, it refers to the Vedic teachings. So for him, that is just a state of mind, which ultimately, with the help of which other lower states of mind are transcended, and then ultimately, of course, this state of mind has also to be transcended. But this is used to transcend other lower states of mind. So that is the second meaning of the word mantra. And the third meaning of the word mantra, ultimately what the mantra stands for, is that pure consciousness which reflects in that state of mind, which reflects clearly, self-evidently, as a result when the mirror of the mind has become completely still and clean. To see our reflection clearly, we need two things. We need the mirror to be still. If the mirror is shaky, our reflection will be shaky. So we won't be able to see our reflection clearly. And the mirror needs to be completely clean. And that is what the word prasada, when Patanjali uses the word prasada, chitta prasada, this stillness and clean and cleansing of the mind, content, when that has occurred, then what the entity which reflects in it, a clear perception of which happens in the deepest states of meditation, that entity, that reflecting entity, that is ultimately what the word mantra stands for. That self, that consciousness, that inner core of our being. This is ultimately what the word mantra stands for. So mantra in this way has three meanings: a collection of words, the first step; the resulting state of mind, the second step; and then the consciousness that reflects, that gets reflected in that state of mind. That is the ultimate meaning of the word mantra. So the mantras of the Upanishads are ultimately, they have to be taken as means, as methods of meditation, as props for the sake of meditation. We understand them first, just grammatically, analytically. The first thing is always Shravana, we hear them. Then Manana, we analyze them. We analyze their meaning, each and every word. We analyze, we go deeper in what is trying to be conveyed, so that our understanding is not illogical, is not misconceptual. We don't understand something as it is not. So for that, we have to use our intellect, we have to make use of our faculty of understanding. So like in asana, we use one tool, our mind, our body. But it's not only using our body. Try to use your body in asana alone and let the mind wander somewhere else. Try to do that. It happens so easily, you don't even need to try. But it's easily visible. The moment this happens, we lose the asana. We lose it. When the mind is gone, we lose it. When consciousness, when awareness is gone, we lose the asana. So asana already includes the body. Then the teacher keeps on telling us about the breath. Now inhale, stretch, now exhale, stretch, all this. So that connects it with the prana and the awareness that we have to bring to our different parts of our body. That is working with the awareness. So similarly, these mantras, they inspire us to work even harder with our faculty of understanding. Like the asana challenges us to work with our body, pranayama challenges us to work with our prana. These mantras, the manana aspect, when we critically analyze, when we question everything and don't believe anything, when we don't accept it because simply somebody has said it. And Shankaracharya is very clear about that. In one place he says, do you think if the Vedas would tell me that fire is cold, I would accept it? Nobody would. Nobody can, and nobody should. If something is against the rishi that is given to us, our logical thinking, our analytical thinking, then it means that we have misunderstood something. Of course, the second part of this is that our analytical thinking has a limitation. That's a different thing. It has a limitation. When we reach that limitation, when we reach that hard wall, which cannot be surpassed through analytical thinking, that is a different thing. But till there, one should make use of the intellect, of the faculty of understanding. One should not get into blind beliefs. So for that purpose, these mantras become extremely helpful. That is the manana aspect. And then the last thing that happens, that cannot happen here in the classes, that has to happen at home. When we take one word, two words, one mantra, which means the very quintessence of the mantra, what the mantra talks about, we sort of like we make the juice of the fruit that we bring from the market. We take out the juice and then ultimately drink that. In the same way, after we have heard we have heard the mantra, we have critically analyzed it, then the ultimate thing that happens, we take the juice out and we experience that. That is called nididhyasana. These three techniques, shravana, manana and nididhyasana, to allow the experience to take over, to actually feel it, not to then the mind and intellect, after they have been exhausted, they have critically analyzed, then the heart takes over. And the actual feeling, the actual experience takes place. This is the method of Dhyana Yoga. This is the method of Swadhyaya Yajna, when study about the self is performed as a yajna, as a sacrifice, as a fire sacrifice, as a worship of that omnipresent divinity. This is what we are trying to do here with these words. The reason for me as well to think about these words, to contemplate on their meaning, and then ultimately, whenever I am free, then to find the time to go within myself and meditate on what I have taught, what I have talked, and actually experience it in the depth of my heart. That is the ultimate goal of every mantra. So Ishavasyam, these words that we were studying, Isha, pure consciousness, the entity which is the supreme master of everything, because matter is unconscious. Within that unconscious matter, that consciousness which decides what to do, what not to do, which is the very source of every thought, every word and every deed, that inner ruler, that inner master, that Isha, that pure consciousness, by that we discussed what this Isha means. Isha Vasyam. Now the second word is Vasyam. Vasya means ought to be covered, ought to be enveloped. Vas means, the root is vas. Vas means to cover, to envelop. In English, the cognate word is vest, such as the vest, also literally vest, the cloth by which we cover our body. And in Sanskrit there is quite a similar word, vest, and in Sanskrit vasti. Vasti, but vasti is the fringes of a cloth, and the Sanskrit word for cloth is vastra or vas, vasamsi, vasas. Vasya means ought to be covered. What should be covered? What should be covered? Idam sarvam. All this. By what? By the awareness of that inner consciousness. All this that is out there, everything that is referred to by this, everything that we refer by the word this, we create this division, I versus this. So the idea is now this, what Dhyanatha is expressing in this mantra is actually the next step after Asmita Matra Sampradyata Samadhi. What Patanjali speaks of, the awareness of the inherent entity, the awareness of one's core being, the I, but as I pointed out earlier in my previous classes, not the I along with all the labels, I'm this, I'm that. But I that has been scrapped away from all the labels, where there is no label at all, no limitation at all, that I, which is the indweller, the Isha, within, by realizing that which is my center, is the center of every living entity equally. So a person needs to expand that limited ego which was limited to the physical body into the whole universe. So his I is not limited to this body, but in his I, in his understanding of I, everything else is included. Nothing remains this, but everything becomes I. So it takes over after a person has understood what the master means by the word you, when he says you and that are one. When the inquiry is complete, who am I? When I have understood who am I, that I has to take over everything. Because when there is nothing to limit it, it is the most logical thing that that same consciousness which lies at the core of my being lies at the core of every being. And when I refer to that as I, then how can I refer to the same entity present within everyone else's heart as this? It is equally I. And it is this step that Dhyanatha is speaking about. Ishavasyam idam sarvam. So Dhyanatha is basically inspiring his disciple to pursue the inner path of meditation till he develops this awareness of consciousness which lies at the core of every individual and is the substratum of everything that exists, and is seen in the understanding of Vedanta as the supreme truth or as a supreme reality. As our definition earlier of reality was that which exists in all the three tenses of time. In that sense, the supreme reality. So by becoming aware of that, by becoming aware of that underlying entity which lies within everything, which is the very substratum of the ever-changing names and forms, by becoming aware of that perpetually, which means the yogi looks at a tree, but our awareness is limited to the tree. He can see beyond the tree. He sees that presence, that eternal presence within the tree. He becomes aware of that when he looks at the tree. He becomes aware of that when he looks at water. He becomes aware of that when he looks at the sun. He becomes aware of that whatever he looks at. Even if he looks at a stone, at a mountain, anything, when he looks aware of that. When he looks at that, his awareness is not limited to that form which is temporary, which is momentary. But at the same time, deep down, he also becomes aware of the entity of which it is made. It is like the masters refer to it as how these two awarenesses can exist at the same time. It is like when you look at the example that is given by them is the way you look at an elephant made of sugar. an elephant made of sugar. You are aware of the form, and you are also aware of the sugar in it, of which it is made. So you can have both awarenesses. The sugar has no form. The sugar is formless compared to all the different forms in which, you see, why this example came. On Diwali, children's in India get all these sugar forms of dogs, of elephant, of horses, they get this. They are not interested in, ultimately they are not interested in the form, because that form will be destroyed, they will eat it. So what they are interested in, the sugar.
It's like Easter.
Yeah, it's like Easter.
Bunnies.
Yeah, chocolate bunnies and yes, exactly. So ultimately, the child is interested in the chocolate, in the sugar. Yet, the form is tantalizing. The form grasps the interest of the child because the child loves these creatures. So, in the same way, there are three stages. First of all is the ignorant stage, in which there is only awareness of the form, not of the inherent entity, which means you just see the form, but there is no awareness of the eternal presence. The second thing is the awareness of both, the awareness of the form as well as the inherent entity. And the third thing is when the awareness of the form becomes completely meaningful and is left behind, and only the awareness of the chocolate or the awareness of the sugar, the awareness of sweetness remains, and everything else becomes meaningful. A person loses interest, complete interest in. So that is the three steps of transition, the first and the last step. That is the difference between savikalpa and nirvikalpa. In savikalpa, the awareness of both is there, and in nirvikalpa, the awareness of form doesn't remain at all. In savikalpa, the awareness of the form is also there, and the awareness of the inherent formless entity is also there. Both are there. So, to become aware of that inherent entity while looking at everything that is there out here in the world, that is what the Dhyanatha is talking about. Ishavasya, when he speaks of covering everything with that, enveloping everything with that, with that awareness, that is what he is talking about. The invisible, which always continues the same, beyond the visible, which is never the same. These are the words of Plato in Phaedo. He uses it. This is a line: the invisible, which continues always the same, but the visible, which is never the same. So to become aware of the invisible within the visible, the invisible which is always the same, within the visible which is never the same, that is what the Dhyanatha is talking about in Ishavasya. The second meaning of the word vas also means to cover from outside, and vas also means to dwell within, to live within. So to cover everything from outside, that is omnipresence, and to be present within, because we have this distinction of out and in. Ultimately everything is one, but this distinction of out and in. So the moment you speak about covering, then it seems as if covering from outside. So everything is covered from outside, from consciousness. But that is not what the word vas means. Vas means both. Vas also means to dwell within. And therefore, where do you live? In Hindi, we say, aap kahan nivas karte hain? Nivas, to live, to dwell, to abide. So the second meaning of this sentence would be that know that everything is dwelt within by that consciousness. That consciousness dwells within everything. This is exactly also what the word Vishnu means. Because Vish, the root Vish means both. The root Vish means to cover. That is that which is present everywhere, and that which is present within. So exactly the same meaning, just a different word. Therefore, sometimes in the Bhagavad Gita, particularly in the 11th chapter, Arjuna uses the word Prasida Devesha Jagan Nivasa, Ananta Devesha Jagan Nivasa. O infinite Lord of consciousness, Jagan Nivasa, you are the entity in which everything dwells and which dwells within everything. The one word Jagan Nivasa means both. So Ishavasyamidam Sarvam is that. So the ultimate goal here, which is being pointed out by Dhyanatha, is to shift one's awareness from plurality, from the many, into the inherent one, into the essence, into the one essence which is present within everything, which is present within oneself as Chit, as pure consciousness, and which is present within everything out there and is clearly perceived as pure presence, as Sat, as pure presence, to which we refer always unknowingly or knowingly, with awareness or without awareness, the moment we use the root is. This is, that is, this tree is, that existence which we point out by this word, this verb of being, that eternal presence. That is what the word Sat, being, means. So within us, Chit, out there as Sat. If you look carefully at these two things, they are not radically different, because Chit itself is also Sat. So you realize that Sat and Chit are just two different descriptions of the same entity. And when a person meditates on this Sat and Chit, then as he transcends suffering, it becomes Ananda as well, bliss as well, sweetness as well, the sweetness that we talked about. And that's why the well-known word so frequently used in the Upanishadic teachings, in the Vedantic teachings, Satchidananda. Sat, Chit, and Ananda. So the idea basically here is of Sahaja Samadhi. What Kabir Das, the great mystic, he speaks of Sahaja Samadhi. Sahaja Samadhi, which means natural state of meditation, which is the next step after a person has meditated to its very depth, has reached the very depth and comes out from that depth and retains that awareness in everything that the person does. That is Sahaja Samadhi. Everything that he does in his life is permeated by the awareness. The awareness remains there. Outwardly, he is functioning as a common human being. But inwardly, he is completely aware of that. That is what the word Sahaja Samadhi stand for. The great mystics, from the time of the Vedic times as we see here, and then up to the medieval times, for example, in the 12th century, Namadeva, one of the greatest saints of India, from Maharashtra, from the Varkari sect, which is highly influential in Maharashtra region, and it does not encourage very much the idea of leaving everything behind, but actually practicing everything in the face of all challenges. So it encourages the person to practice all this in the world itself, not renouncing the world. So it does not encourage very much the idea of renunciation, but to practice within this world itself. And he is one of the greatest masters of this Varkari tradition that is still widely influential in Maharashtra. That Namadeva, in one place, he speaks to his disciple, his beloved disciple, Kahata Namadev, which means Namadev says, Sunahu Tilochan, O Tilochan, listen to me. Balak Palana Paudhiyale. A child, the mother has laid down her child in the cradle, and herself, Antari Bahari Kaj Birudhi, herself, she is completely, fully at work, busy at the cause of her house, outside, inside, cleaning outside, cleaning inside, washing the dishes and everything. But Chita Subarik Rakhiale, deep down in her thought, she's every single moment she is together with her beloved child. And the moment there is even a little bit of something, a little bit of sound there, she runs back and checks if everything is fine and well. So it is that thing. She's busy, she's doing everything, she's fully concentrated in all her deeds in her work that she's doing, yet at the same time, one part of herself is completely and deeply dedicated. That is what happens when a person loves. Whether it is the motherly love, or whether it is the love of the lover and the beloved. And I think if you look at, because the whole story of Krishna is a deep symbol, and Krishna's story celebrates these two loves to its uttermost perfection. Whether it is the love of the lover and the beloved, which is the same thing, because there, when the love is extremely intense, then whatever the lover and the beloved do in their mind, in their heart, they are together with their beloved. They cannot help otherwise. In their thoughts, they are with it, with him or her. It cannot be otherwise. So that aspect, or then the love that is there between the mother and the father. So for example, if you look at some of the most, which are my favorite, she's my favorite dancer, Rajashri, warrior, a South Indian dancer. If you look, Bharatnatyam dancer, Bharatnatyam is the most ancient form of dance. And if you look at her dances, they celebrate either the motherly love of Yashoda to Krishna as a child. Even what you saw here, the last dance item by Prakriti Bhaskar here, that was celebrating. She was celebrating the motherly love of Yashoda to Krishna, or then the love that is there between Radha and Krishna. So that becomes the perfect symbol. These two loves become the perfect symbol for this love to the entity which is the source of all beauty. And if yes, it is the source of all beauty, the very foundation of everything that is beautiful. When a person falls in love with that, exactly the same thing happens to what happens to the mother and to the lover and the beloved. They keep the entity eternally in one's awareness. This is what the Dhyanatha is speaking about here. So we will continue later in our next class into Yatkincha Jagatyam Jagat, the next part of the verse. Any questions or thoughts? Yes?
Question about the mantras. How to be able to catch the meaning? Is there a way of pronunciation and how to vibrate it and the body? And is there that kind of teachings?
Yes. Particularly when it comes to the Veda mantras, there are very, very specific methods of pronouncing them correctly. Because somehow the Vedic Sanskrit, that is also related actually to the meaning. Because Vedic Sanskrit is a little bit like Chinese. The moment you change the pitch, as far I have not studied Chinese, I don't know Chinese, but with as much as I know, the moment you change the pitch of a word, the same word, but it means something different. So the same is true about Vedic Sanskrit. That did not exist in classical Sanskrit, but in the Vedic times, like Chinese today or in ancient times, similarly Sanskrit in ancient times had to be pronounced in a perfect pitch. Every word had to have a perfect pitch. So today, when masters, they pronounce Vedic mantras, they learn how to pronounce it properly in that what we call Udatta, Anudatta and Swarita, the three pitches, which means the higher, the lower and the intermediate one, the three pitches. So Udatta is the higher, Anudatta is the lower and Swarita is the one in between. So these three pitches. Every mantra, for example, Om Agni me ide Purohitam Yajyasya Deva Mritwijam Hota Aram Ratnadhatamam, like this. So you have these three pitches. Yeah, they are indicated if you look at the words, the Sanskrit version of the mantra, the lower line and the upper line, and where there is no line. These are the three pitches. The lower pitch, the higher pitch, and where there is no line, the vertical and the horizontal line. So, however, this pitch can only exist in pronunciation. The idea is that as long as we pronounce the mantra correctly and we produce the sound with our mouth, an adherence to this system of pitches is important. But this is external japa, external repetition. The moment a person goes deeper within and starts doing what we call manasa japa, internal japa, which is considered higher and more advanced than the external one, obviously these pitches don't make sense anymore. And therefore, in japa, for when the mantras are pronounced for one's own sake, now I'm talking in technical terms of what is used, for example, by Maharshi Panini on whom even Patanjali has written commentary, when he speaks Yajya Karmanya Japanyum Khasamasu. In Japa he says, for when a person does it for his own sake, then Ekashruti is permissible, which means a person can pronounce these mantras without adhering to these pitches. Then it doesn't matter. It is allowed. Ekashruti, which means one sound, the same pitch, is fully allowed. Yes.
You anticipated my next question. And I've heard it said that to enter this deep state of meditation that you were talking about, just reciting these mantras is enough, but I believe also that you have to understand their meaning to really go deeply, right?
I know that is a widely held belief, which nonetheless has been there. It originates from the Mimamsaka tradition, where the sound of the mantras is considered the powerful entity, and where the original power is in the sound of the mantras and not the meaning. However, the tradition that makes sense to me, which is known as the Nairukta tradition of the Vedic interpretation, which is about, because then these traditions which completely focus on the sound alone, they are not interested in the meaning. So for them, the mantras, even if they have a meaning, they are not interested in the meaning. They are just interested in pronouncing the mantras, and that's all.
That remains superficial, isn't it?
That is what Maharshi Yaska points out very clearly in his discussion. He is a great Vedic grammarian, 6th century BC, precedes even Patanjali by around 300 or 400 or 500 years approximately. Maharshi Yaska, one of the great exponents of Vedic grammar, he says that anagna viva shushkaidho natajwalati karhichit. Put a lot of logs into ash, but if there is no fire, then will it burn? You have to bring the fire in it. If you don't bring the fire, yadadhitam avijñatam nigade naiva shabdyate. If something is pronounced without understanding its meaning, for him it is futile effort. It is like putting wood into ashes and where there is no fire. So his view would be this. This view we also find in the Mahabharata, which is from where the Bhagavad Gita comes, and the fact that the Upanishads analyze Vedic mantras. The Upanishads won't make sense if you don't understand what Tattvamasi means, what Aham Brahmasmi means, and just keep on doing japa of Tattvamasi, 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 you don't understand what it means. Then what will happen is what Bhima in one of his discussions says, that your mind is confused like the mind of those who keep on pronouncing the Veda mantras without understanding their meaning. Like they are confused. Similarly, oh my brother, your mind is confused today. So he takes them as an example. So I personally, I believe that knowing the meaning is extremely beneficial. On the contrary, I would say that till we don't understand the meaning, it doesn't make sense, and it's useless.
These days, the priests,
Yeah,
they don't know what they are chanting.
they don't know what they are chanting. Yes, ask them.
They know
Very
little,
little.
but they know very little. They know very little. Ask them, they will not be able to explain.
And they propagate this idea
Yes.
to save themselves, because they have to save themselves.
See, and it is said in the past, in the Vedic time, the mantras, they were very powerful. For example, they could kindle with certain mantras, they could kindle fire. They could make rain. They could burn deepas with the mantras. And looked here now, mantras have no power anymore because first of all our life is different and then we don't understand.
We don't understand, we just recite.
Like puppets.
Actually, I just remember that in ancient times, during every ritual, the work of the greatest high priest, who was called the high priest, the Brahma priest, who was the supreme priest, really the head of, there used to be, I think, 16 priests and the husband-wife, plus 16 priests. So 18 people had to come together to perform these Vedic rituals. And the head priest, the high priest, he would not pronounce a single mantra. His work would just to completely sit in silence and meditate on the meaning of what everybody else is reciting. That would be his work. And his work was considered the greatest work, the highest work. Because he was meditating on the very meaning. And he was given the pada, the pada. What is pada in English? No, not pada. Pada, which means, the prime minister is a position, yeah. He was given the position of a head priest who knew the meaning of every mantra and therefore could meditate on that meaning while everybody else was reciting it. Yes?
So shlokas, you said, were kind of metered verses?
All verses are metered.
Okay, but so this is the question I have, is the mantra, they aren't metered verses? So there's no kind of...
No. They are fully metered. You have three types of mantras. Mm-hmm. One is called Rik. Rik is metered, and there is not only one meter, but there are many meters. Maharshi Pingala is the master of meters who discusses all these Vedic meters in great detail. And Rik mantras, as they are known as Rik, these mantras are metered mantras. Then there are Yajush mantras. Yajush mantras are in prose. They have no meter. They are completely free from any meter. They are mostly as a prose. So you recite them, usually the priests that you hear reciting here, they are Yajush mantras. So they recite them like a prose. Harihi Om Ikhe Tvorje Tvavaya Vastadevo Vaha Savita Prarpayatu Shreshtatamaya Karmana. Like this. There is no prose. There is no meter here. So no poem. Just a prose. So that is called Yajush. And then the third is when you transform a metered mantra, Rik, into a song. Then it becomes Saman, which is the equivalent of Psalms in the Judo-Christian traditions.
So then the Gita is this more... I'm still not quite understanding the difference in terms of how it's like stylistically different. No. You will find the mantras in the same style of the Bhagavad Gita. The thing is, if you remember our discussion that we had in the very beginning, Shruti and Smriti. Shruti is the revealed body of literature and Smriti is of human creation. So shloka is the word used for verses of human creation, and mantra is the word used for verses which are of the revealed nature. That is the difference. Aren't necessarily, they're not reflecting a stylistic difference.
No. There will be a difference in style because the Vedic Sanskrit is extremely ancient, which is used in the mantras. The Vedic Sanskrit is extremely ancient, and for example, the Sanskrit that we find in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Puranas, is a little bit. You can very clearly see it's rather modern. Yes. So in that sense, there is a tremendous stylistic difference. But the meter, when we are talking about the meter, because, for example, Srimad Bhagavad Gita is written in a meter that is called Anushtup, the Anushtup meter, 4 quadrants, 4 parts. So the same we find also in the Vedas. Yes. But the words themselves would be different. The language is different. And many constructions which existed in the Vedic era of particular verbs, they don't exist in modern Sanskrit. So you won't find them in the Bhagavad Gita. Particular tense forms, tenses, you won't find them in the Bhagavad Gita. Yes. Sorry, yes? Yes?
We were talking before about the I, which is, of course, it should be everything, But when we look at the Shanti Mantra, Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, the question, of course, arises, at least I thought of, where's the I in this? And the more I think about it, it would seem to me that the I, at the moment, would be Purnamadaha, that, because we are not aware of the I.
Yes, of that omnipresent...
So this is something known as none.
Yeah.
So the that...
Yes.
The I is still that because it's not known. It can be known.
Yes.
But it's not yet known.
Yes. Till it is not known, then therefore the word tat is sometimes used to it. That, which is for the time being beyond our comprehension.
Yeah, so
yes.
We are that. We are
yes.
Not, because one would think this is this.
Yes.
Right? But
yes.
It's not this.
It's not this.
It's that.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Until it becomes this.
Yes, this discussion of expanding one's limited ego, which is, first of all, because this limited ego, which is limited to this body, has to be broken to allow it to expand into everything else. This discussion is originally discussed in great detail in the dialogue between Maharshi Yajnavalkya and his beloved wife Maitreyi in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which is the last Upanishad, a very detailed Upanishad, and which is actually an explanation of Ishavasya Upanishad, because it beautifully corresponds. This belongs to the Shukla Yajurveda. This is the last one chapter of Shukla Yajurveda, and the Brahmana of this Shukla Yajurveda, which means the Brahmana text, the detailed commentary of this Brahmana text, the last 6th chapter of that Brahmana text is known as Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So that discussion is there. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is the biggest one. It is called Brihadaranyaka. Brihat means the big, and Aranyaka means, the text that ought to be studied in the forest. So that is the last one, the 10th one, and the biggest one. And yes, but there, this discussion, this meditation on expanding one's limited sense of ego into a universal sense of ego, which does not, where this distinction of I versus this diminishes, but everything that was being referred to as this is meditated upon as being indifferent to the core of one's being. That has been discussed there by Maharshi Yajnavalkya with his wife Maitreyi. So let us conclude with Bhagavad Gita. That is Gyaneshwar. That is Gyaneshwar. I have it. Yes, sure. It's your book. I have it in Krishna Gita. Yes, that is Dhyanadeva. Dhyanadeva was another great master of this. Namadeva and Jnanadeva, I think they were both contemporary, approximately contemporary. Yes. Yes, Dhyanadeva's Bhagavad Gita is like the Bible for Maharashtra. You will find it in everybody's home in Maharashtra. Yes. Yeah, it's in Marathi. He wrote it in Marathi. And Marathi people usually, for them it's like the Veda. His commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. Dhyanatha's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shantihi, Shantihi, Shantihi.